We can speak now to two authors with insights into what might happen next. Matt Rogan's book, All to Play For, How Sport Can Reboot Our Future, looks at how athletes can be a force for change and for good. And Dr. Jarrod Spencer is a sports psychologist and author of Mind of the Athlete, Clearer Mind, Better Performance. Well, thanks both of you very much for joining us. Matt, let me start with you if I can. Is this an example of precisely that, of the power of sport to make a difference? In this case, player power, or perhaps more of a calculated recognition, in this case from Roland Garros, that they probably got it wrong when they pushed hard on saying you'll take a fine and you'll take your medicine?
Well, I think ultimately there's been acknowledgement from several sides of this that maybe their initial remarks were slightly too strident. You know, ultimately we've seen some player power from Naomi Osaka in particular, with the belligerence of her initial statement, which we saw matched with a fairly belligerent statement from the Grand Slams. And you know, professional sport needs successful athletes playing at successful tournaments, well represented through a media that reaches millions. And therefore, the only real solution is that everyone steps back from the brink a little bit and tries to find a way of redefining relationships between those three parties in a very new world in which we're now living in.
Well, that's right. I mean, let me turn to you, Jarrod. I wonder what you made of this, because, I mean, you're a sports psychologist. Surely one of the messages for athletes, among others, fair enough, and mental health is critically important, but is still that you manage your strengths and weaknesses. You know, if you want to win, you don't expose too much, do you?
Well, I actually applaud Naomi for what she did. I think it was fantastic, because this is really the spark that's lighting the fire for a revolution within mental health, within athletics. I mean, the truth is, it's been a suck it up, don't whine, don't complain, push through kind of attitude for generations, which is great. But in 2021, we've got to have more tools in the mental toolbox of our athletes, especially considering what we've all been going through with this pandemic. So therefore, this is going to take systemic change on multiple levels. The most important is really about putting the emotional regulation skills into the hands, into the toolbox of the athletes themselves. We've got to do more to teach them how to manage the pressure cooker, not just expecting them to manage it.
So that's interesting, Dr. Spencer. So it's about teaching the athletes how to manage the pressure rather than changing the requirements of what they have to do? Or do you also think that in the case of the Grand Slams, for example, they've got to do something about coming off a highly intense match and going straight into media interviews?
Absolutely. It's a both and it's a systemic change. And so, of course, yeah, from the bottom up, we've got to really start putting the funding, quite frankly, not just the lip service of we got to do more for mental health, but we got to do more for the funding. But yes, the general rule of thumb is an athlete's at their lowest emotional point when they walk off the court or the field. What we've got to do is really give them just maybe a break. I always say to parents, don't scar your kid, meaning like wait until they're showered, changed, ate, and rested until you really talk to them about their athletic competition. And so that's really important, even at the professional level. If just allow them to shower, change, eat, and rest, I mean, they'll be much better emotionally. Unfortunately, that's not the way it often works. And this situation here was an example of how it went kind of south.
Okay, I'm taking notes of that for my kids in future, because often I get bad responses. Matt, it's been interesting, hasn't it, how much players have rallied around Naomi, particularly after she came out and talked about her own issues with depression, and how fast the Grand Slams came out and said, we're going to have meaningful change. We don't know what that meaningful change is, but they have come out and said they're going to have meaningful change. Do you think now something could change, given how important these press briefings and interviews are to the financial health of these sports?
Yes, I do, because I actually think they're important to the financial health of the athletes too. You know, Naomi Osaka makes, as part of $30 million a year from brand endorsements, so brands that need her in the media and want her to be in the media. So she needs to be able to engage with populations in a way that works for her, and the tournaments need her to be happy and healthy, both on and off the court. So as I say, I think the only real way forward in this regard is sensible dialogue and compromise. And I think there's a precedent for that. You know, if you look at the way in which the commissioner of the NBA, Adam Silver, has has tried to work the opportunities he gives to his athletes who have global profiles to share their views on their terms and not be so formulaic around the way they handle media. If you look at the way in which some professional football clubs have worked with star athletes who have firm and clear views on how they want to represent themselves. Marcus Rashford in North America, in Manchester United, for example. There are precedents from other sports. Tennis is never particularly early to change and early to innovate, but I do agree that this could be the tipping point.
Well, we wait now to see what the authorities mean by creating meaningful improvements. For now, though, Matt Rogan, Jarrod Spencer, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.